Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Live Your Dreams podcast, where we dive deep into real stories behind the dreamers and relentless forces of change. I'm your host, Joe Gawalis, alongside my co-host.
Where's Victor?
Chris, today's guest is an inspiring individual whose life sounds like it was indeed made to be a script. And in fact, his incredible life, the journey behind this man, is being brought to the screen in a new limited series called I Am Somebody, developed by our other guest, Frank M. Calo of FMC Productions. And that's exactly what all these stories are all about: bringing great people together, standing your ground, owning truth, and proving that no matter where you're from, you are somebody. We are honored to welcome Keith Davies, who's lived 100 lives in one, and the renowned reduced producer, director, Frank M. Calo, to the Live Your Dreams podcast. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. It's very important because I really wanted to feature Keith. I think what Keith developed, it's his story, and he came to me, and it's called I Am Somebody, and he wrote a book first, and it needed work as every writing process goes through. And he said, Frank, give me another chance to write it again. And I said, fine, let's do that. And he took the time to do it, sent it back to me. The rewrites were better, and then we turned that into. We were thinking about a screenplay originally, but it was just so much of his life that after meeting him, he came to New York. I met with him and our other partner, Seema Rubin, and we went to dinner and lunch, and then I started listening to what he has to offer to this world, to this life, and I said, this is. There's so much in the story. I think it's best to go mini series, and that's what we have. We have seven 1 hour episodic works of a complete work of a mini series that we want to really get it going. We have it in some good hands right now. But I think I want to turn it over to Keith, because this is more about Keith, so you get to know more about him and his story, because what he says is basically what's in the story anyway. And I'll let him tell you what it's about, and I'll jump into as well I can. Or any questions you have, Joe.
No, absolutely, Frank. And Keith, really, Frank, smart move moving into a miniseries, because Keith, your story is so inspiring, and it does deserve that gravitas of being told over time. So let's take it right back, right? I Am Somebody. It started out as a great book. You developed the book. Now you're getting into the series. I'd love to hear about the beginning of your journey, where this started, because you have, for our listeners, such an amazing backstory about you, Keith.
Well, the book, it was the original book that I wrote in 2018, published it in 18, is about 60%, 65% true, and 35 to 40% fiction. And it's called Adrian's Revenge. And I self-published it and put it on Amazon, and I've sold over 2,000 copies, which is a lot for first author self-published book. It came in at number 32 on the top 100 of Amazon, and I was just blown away in the first 2 weeks that we got there. I mean, I was just so excited. Anyway, from there, in 2019 through 2021, I've got notes here, so I'm giving.
No, please, Keith, continue. I love it. That sounds fantastic.
So I wrote the screenplay called The White Lady, and when I finished it, and was based on the book. When I finished it, I sent it to Seema Rubin in New York. Now, Seema and I go back 40 years, and our story has to do with OHKAY, where I was involved with her as as associate producer in New York around 76, 77, 78.
Okay.
And we became very close friends. And there's a whole story about how this whole thing came together, and it was and what happened during the production, and so on and so forth. So I'll get back to that in a minute. I sent it to Seema. Seema read it, and she said to herself, "This is very good." Of course, she knew the book, and then she read the screenplay, and she said, "What am I going to do with this?" And she was talking to her daughter, and her daughter had worked with Frank, and Lonnie said, "Why don't you send it over to Frank Calo and see what he has to say about it?" That's how it got to Frank. Frank read it, and then he and Rick then got a hold of me and we talked further, and Seema, and I flew to New York with my wife, and we had lunch with Seema, and the next thing we know, we had a deal, signed a 3-year deal with Frank and his company to make take the screenplay to a more saleable, a more cinematic than what I had sent them, because they're the pros. I agreed to it and they took it. Next thing in my conversations with Frank, he found out I was in Vietnam. He said, "You were in Vietnam? Tell me about that."
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I told him about what I did in Vietnam and how that whole thing worked. And next thing, he and Rick are working on, he goes, "You know what? This story's bigger than what you've got here. Let us take this thing and run with it." Well, they did, and next thing I know, they've got a 7 or 8 episodes, depending on whether we're going to go with that Vietnam series, which is not in it right now, but I think both Frank and Rick would like to see that. I know Seema would, because it's a powerful opening.
Sure, sure.
They did a beautiful job on the writing of that and how that whole story, and not many people. It's very interesting to a lot of people what happened in Vietnam, but this story's never been told. And
Nice.
if there's any reluctance to hold them back on it at this point, because it's very costly. But if I'm sure that if Frank can get this done, they'd love to get the Vietnam story in there. Anyway,
No, you're right. Absolutely.
so we're at this point, and we're not 3 years. We went through the pandemic, which frankly kicked the hell out of the whole thing.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, 100%.
Hollywood shut down, movie theaters shut down, everything shut down. And so a good portion of the 3-year deal that I had with Frank, Rick, and Seema got delayed.
Sure.
So I gave him a 2-year extension when that ran out. Now, since that happened, Frank's company has been able to really do some exciting things with it, and I'm more optimistic than I've been all the way through this, that this just might get done. It's not a cheap production. It's taking the money that Frank is trying to raise is considerable, but I believe he's got some inroads there that may just get this thing done.
Well, let me tell you, Keith, I know it's hard to interrupt, but I've known Frank for quite some time, what FMC has accomplished over the years.
Yes.
I guarantee you Frank's working his butt off over there. What I think is really cool, right, is the fact that a self-published author having 2,000 great sales on Amazon, number 32 on the list. Now you have a major production company in New York behind this, driving this entire production forward, passed through the pandemic, and now you're out here 2025, more doors are open, and FMC and Frank are behind it 100%, pushing it forward. That's got to be really exciting for you.
Well, it is, and as I said, it's I'm more excited now, but with the potential that I have been up to this point. But of course, I know what delayed it originally. So,
Of course.
and Rick and Frank continue to write and rewrite and bring the story up to date. I have written a new book, and I called it God's Masterpiece, and it's based on the screenplay now. I changed the name,
right.
and I kind of brought the story back into parts that I wanted to do, and it's now being edited. And I sent it to Frank, and it's got some new things in there that Rick and Frank haven't seen, that maybe I sent it so maybe they can use it to enhance or make the story even better.
Yeah, I sent it to Rick already, and we're reading it now. And I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, Keith. Please.
Frank's excited, Keith. That's a good thing. He's already getting over it.
I'm loving great. I'm loving these titles too. Where did you get these ideas from, these titles for your books and films? Where'd they come from? Was it from a long-term journey, something that you've always been thinking about, or did it come to you recently?
I'm sorry, ask that first part of the question.
I was saying I love the titles of the book and the films. Where did this come from, the inspiration for the titles?
Okay, the book Adrian's Revenge, my middle name is Adrian.
Okay.
So
okay.
that was the character, the protagonist in the book is Adrian Davis. And so everything that this person went through, which, as I said, about 65, 2/3 of it is a true story of what I went through in a small town in Northern California, which I call Gold City. And that's where Adrian's revenge, because there was a revenge that came out of the whole thing at the end. So that's how that book. The White Lady, when I wrote the screenplay, cocaine is sometimes known as the White Lady. Especially back in the day. I don't know about now, but back in the 70s, 80s, it was called the White Lady. So that's what I sent to Frank, and then from there they took it. Once they got took my story and made it what it is. One of them said, "You know what? This is I Am Somebody," and that's where their
Well, how that happened was, let me just explain the miniseries now. Basically, it's his life. Which by meeting with Keith, I talked to him on the phone, but by meeting with him in person and his lovely wife and Seema, our partner, and Rick Martin. So you know Rick, Joe.
Oh, yeah, Rick's great.
He's my
100%.
co-writer. You know, I don't go anywhere without him. I've been with him for 20 years. We've been writing together for 20 years, and I just listened to this man, and it was when I got his story or the ideas from Seema and stuff about Keith. It was so, after I meeting him, it was so limitless. I just said, wait a minute, there's more to this. I mean, it's not just that. And I started listening to him, and then I realized that this is the story, and this is what the miniseries is about. It's about a man. He has the faith of God in his hands. I mean, figuratively speaking, he has nowhere idea where he's going, but yet he follows these steps and he makes money. He knows how to make money, and he knows how to get through things, but without any objective, you know. And I found that
aimless shots. Yeah.
But what's fascinating, not only did he go through a major thing in a tour in Vietnam, but I had a best friend's older brother, who was one of the people I knew actually went to Vietnam because I was too young, and he had the same job that Keith had.
Oh, sure.
And it was a security supplying supplies on gear and ammunition all over the Vietnam zones. But they had to go through and they were being sniped at, they were being shot at, it was a major mission, but they just took it at, like, okay, this is our daily job, and the way he explains it. And but what fascinated me too, because I was at NYU Film School, is I used to hang out at CBGB's back in the day. And then I found out that he was the man who created it and started formulating. Keith, jump in where you feel like you need to, is about selling the T-shirts of the bands that came in.
That was famous.
And nobody did that. But he expanded all the way through Madison Square Garden with the Stones, with the Who. I mean, his list of clientele was incredible, of all the memorabilia that he was doing. And then they got from Keith. I'm just repeating Keith's said is then the Madison Square Garden said, wait a minute, this guy's making. This is incredible. So they outpriced it, in rentals, possessions.
Then I'll let that happen. That's it.
But to me, it's about a man, and in a period of our lifetime, 1974 to, him 70 in the 70s, 72, 74 for the Vietnam, but then CBGBs, and then the whole rock and roll, and then he started sponsoring Supertramp, the famous band Supertramp.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sure.
But the whole thing, and then where we came up with the title was, and the civil rights movement was happening a lot in Washington Square area too.
Yes.
One time, and I just saw this, and at the same time, there's a documentary that's about that period, his period, and I watched it, and I saw a beautiful speech by Jesse Jackson that said, the guy said to him, he goes, "Man, what are you guys playing the blues? What are you guys crying the blues for? What do you know about the blues?" And he goes, "You motherfucker, what do I know about the blues?" This is Jesse Jackson. And he went into that I am somebody speech. And he goes, that beautiful I am somebody speech. Aretha Franklin did it in a song. She took it became a cry. And then I looked at him, and I looked at Keith, and I looked at the story, and I said, well, that's what this man was talking about. You know what I mean, Joe? I'm always talking about subtext. The subtext of this is he's saying, I am somebody.
Yeah.
And the world knows it, but they don't know who he is. And I want to make sure they do. And that's where we came. I said, you know what? That's a good title. I am somebody. So we cleared the clearances for the title. We cleared all that kind of stuff. And we're all good with that. And so that's basically how we got the title "I Am Somebody." But it's about this man's journey. He just fell into these things, but he overcame these obstacles. The adversities that all of us could have said, oh, most of us would say, but he just went. He went through it and just did it, and became a very successful man on top of that. So I mean, and then you could continue now on the story, Joe.
No,
I love that title. Just
Yeah.
to say one thing, I am somebody. Everyone can identify with that, whether they're willing to admit it or not. They at least feel that way inside.
Yeah.
Who am
Yes. And you see
that's
see this new commercial that's out right now. It's a black and white commercial, and it's out right now. And I'm not sure if it's a sports commercial. It might be a Nike thing. And the guy goes, and the little girl's struggling. And she goes, I can't do it. I can't do it. And somebody comes up and he goes, boom, you're somebody. And she goes, you know what? I am somebody. And the whole commercial now is I am somebody. So I know we're on the right track.
Absolutely. Talking about right track is 100% right. Keith, going back to you, I love it. Your story. You get somebody like Frank to care about it. I love to hear your journey out in somebody developing all that from your perspective from the start. Because Frank, so well said. What a journey you went through, Keith.
Well, and just last night, I was watching Godfather of Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, I just started watching it.
Yeah.
And it was and then the last one I watched last night was right in the middle of the 70s and the Black Panthers.
Yeah.
And lots of people don't know how all of that worked.
Yes.
There's at least 2 generations that have no idea what the hell happened there and what was going on. Frank and Rick have taken portions of that 70s turmoil and redneck part of Northern California during that period of time, and even redneck government periods during that, and they have intertwined that into my story to make it even more interesting and make that work. In other words, they're showing how things were during a period that many people's I know it. I'm almost 80 years old. Bottom line is a whole bunch of people don't know about that period. So that they've intertwined that into the story also. And I found it very interesting to be watching last night and then seeing and then knowing what Frank, Rick, and Cena had done.
Yeah, and it's amazing.
To answer the last question on the naming of the new book, God's Masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
I was in catechism when I was a kid, and somewhere in whether it was a nun or the father during that period of time was talking about God's masterpiece, and I couldn't remember the context during that. I was 8 or 9 years old, but in the new book, see, I was in Ice Follies Holiday on Ice for 6 years. And I met a wonderful lady who I ended up now as my wife 40 years later, but 30. So I write about it, and she is my God's masterpiece.
Oh, that's beautiful. Really.
Beautiful.
That's great.
So in the story, in the book now, it opens in Vietnam and has a lot, it almost goes by the screenplay as Rick and Frank wrote it, because it was so good.
That's great.
Then I take it into Ice Follies Holiday on Ice, and I tell the whole story, which most people have no one's ever told that story. So it's a wonderful story about the traveling shows that no longer exist.
Huh.
There's Disney on Ice is the only thing.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Yes.
So so I told that whole story, and it's some really interesting behind the scenes stories that I told. Then I take it to the rock and roll years where I toured with all of the rock shows. I did the CBGB theater there in New York, the story there where we invested into that, and frankly, Hilly Crystal, we had real problems with Hilly in the theater, and I take it into all of those years.
It was a dump. It was a dive.
Oh, it was well, and we invested in his theater. He wanted to open a theater. Anyway, bottom line, that didn't work out, but it finally did, and I tell that story. Then I come home to Gold City, and I open the bar, and I go through that scene, which is a lot like what's in Adrian's Revenge. I leave, I go to Phoenix and finish my education. From there, I go to Glacier Park, where I was director of hotel operations for 2 years. And now I have the knowledge of hotels and the operations there. I tell a wonderful story about Glacier Park, and then I come back to Gold City where I buy the Union Hotel, and the Union, and I transform it, and then that's where Robin and I come back together.
Sure.
Bottom line of this, and then we read a lot of Frank's story about rednecks and hippies, and which were all over the place, and Asians and Hispanics, and the businesses they were trying to open, and the difficulty of what happened during the 70s and early 80s, and during that
Period.
toward the end, there are people that die. And then there's revenge that
Yeah.
comes out. I'm not going to tell you the end.
Yeah.
The end.
No, don't tell us that. Come on now. No.
Let me just
Keep us in
backtrack.
suspense. Yes.
Yeah, let me just fact check a little bit. How he was a man of New York City. He was all over New York City. He was
Oh, yeah,
everything.
yep.
Seema, Seema Lonnie is who Seema. But Lonnie, Joe and Chris, from the play too.
Oh yeah, Lana's right. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Seema is her mother. Now
Okay.
Seema's a well-known producer in her day, and they had a connection, and we tell the story of how Keith came in and helped Seema out one time, and
Yes.
I'm allowed to say this, and it's well, she had this show going on. It's on Broadway, and apparently the story goes is that somehow she lost the finance. In the last minute, the guy said no.
No, it happens. Yeah.
Nah. And then she says, "Oh my God!" And Broadway was cheaper back then, so she was out like $200,000-$300,000. She goes, "I'm going to close. I'm going to lose. My other investors are going to sue me. Whatever." She was so scared. In comes Keith into her life and says, and I mean they were friends already. And he says, "Well, I'll help you. I'll help you." And he helped her finance that extra money. But how he did it? But it's a funny story. How he did it is he says, "I want you to go meet this guy."
Had to do with the Rolling Stones to it.
Yeah. I said, he goes, I want you to go meet this guy. So she goes to this guy, and I'm not gonna say names, but she goes to the guy, and it's a hotel, sleazy hotel. And she goes, "Okay." And now she's a classy lady. She's,
Going
she's
to
in her
that place.
she comes from a lot of, wealth, and then she's very classy. She goes in, it's a sleazy hotel. The guy has a Jamaican bodyguard, and he's up there, and he's like, and she goes, she goes, "Oh man, I'm in trouble." And she's thinking, "Keith, what'd you get me into?"
Yeah,
and then she goes, and then she goes, "Well, I'm here for the money you're talking about the money for the," he goes, "Yeah, it's right there on the bed." And she looks over, he goes, there's this thing on the bed. And he goes, "Well, open it." So she opens it, and she looks in. It's a legit body, head and shoulders sculpture of Adolf Hitler. And he goes,
What?
Yeah. He said, she goes, "That's worth a lot of money. That's worth more than your plate. Take that, sell that." And she freaked out. She goes, "I don't want this." And
I don't want-
Seema actually thought that she was going to die.
I'm sure she did. Keith. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
She actually believed they were going to kill her in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And when they told me that story, I said, "We got to use this." Now, this is the
100%.
pro-
Sure.
Now,
could you
where
not?
Keith was hanging around with CBGB, you got to remember it's on Lower East Side back then,
Yeah.
and 3rd Street, and which was a crazy neighborhood then. That's where they dumped all the trash, everything went there during that period. Now, around the corner was the Black Panthers. Around the other corner was the Hells Angels, and who they befriended with. So all these people come into this story in the beginning, first 2 episodes, and we're seeing this life, how he's running New York City, how he's able to get through without. He's 20 years old, man. He's making millions of dollars. He's 20 years, and you know how hard that is when you're that young.
Yeah.
And then he gets a call. Now this is where the story starts. In our story, is that he gets a call that his grandmother, who he's very, very close with in real life, passed away and left him this bar in this Golden City town that he's talking about. He's thinking that I don't want it. Okay, what am I going to do with that? And then he goes there, and he's thinking he's going to sell it. All this kind of stuff. All this things come in the story. It comes into the story, and then the town starts giving him a hard time. They were redneck. They had signs: no hippies allowed, no Asians allowed, no Mexicans allowed.
Yeah.
It's and my point of all that is it's no different than what's happening today. You know, so there's some similarities to what we're talking about in today's world. And then Keith said, being the man he is, the defiant man, he says, "Oh yeah, well, I'll show you." And he turned that little club into, and that's where the story really starts.
Yes, the start. Yes, yeah.
Into a very successful, and then he brought in a rock and roll band, Supertramp. As
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And the town went crazy. The people went, "Oh my God, you're bringing Supertramp to our location." But the politicians of that town went, "Oh, we got to get rid of this guy.
Get rid of it, of course. They don't
That's
want
the
that.
conflict. That's the conflict right there." So, and then it goes into the cartel. It goes into all these people that come into this world, how they try to stop him. Now we heightened it, of course.
Of
for
course,
cinematic
of course.
purposes.
Yeah.
But it's how they tried to, but how he became a success. That bar became a big success in that town. And out of that, he was going to sell it. If they would have let him alone, he probably would have sold it. but the fact that
it was done in 5 minutes. That's it. All right, I'm done.
Yeah, we're gonna drag you out here on your tail. You know, he goes, "Oh yeah, well watch this." Now he went to prison, he went to jail, all kinds of things through the city permits, you know. So that's where the story really takes place. But it's his defiance to this system that are meant to hold you back.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
He's the type of person that you cannot, like you and Chris and I, and we're all of us here, Rick and Seema, you don't hold us back.
No, you're going to make things
you hold us
happen.
back, we're coming more at you, you know?
Exactly.
But with thought and with depth, you know, and that's where Keith comes in. That's what's fascinating about his story.
Oh, no, Keith, it's so fascinating who you are. I mean, really, obviously, all the things that are being enhanced through the story, but you yourself, you're such a dynamic individual, right? You have a presence about you. You start speaking. You want to listen to you, what your story, what you have to say. For your perspective, right now, you're getting to meet somebody like Frank, who's also a great dynamic individual. He's taking your story and he's shaping it into this series, right? How was that process? Working with somebody like Frank along the way, right? You guys are getting to see this grow. Was it interesting seeing your book, your part of your backstory start to develop into this great mini series that we call I Am Somebody, because it's truly fascinating.
Well, I was totally fascinated. Again, when I told just by giving them the story of Vietnam, and it was about half the time I was there. It was the first half of the time I was there, and then when they put sergeant stripes on my arm, I was able to get out of going out on the convoys and doing that. I was basically then I was at the home base and I worked for the first sergeant. But from what I was told him about the story, and then and being in San Francisco before I was drafted, that was they did an interesting.
Oh yes, that's a good
Haight
point.
Ashbury, because I was living on Standing Street, which is just above the Haight, and they did a wonderful opening there that took me to a helicopter. The next thing I know, I was in Vietnam, and it was very cool how they did it. And
That's wow.
And then they did the story and was able to enhance it, but make it believable.
Sure, yeah.
Very important to me. I questioned a couple things when I read the first part, and then I could see where Rick and Frank researched that enough that they were able to answer my question.
There you go.
You're right, and that all can work very well.
Yeah, and that's a great opening scene, because that's what we call the hook. And the movie opens up. The first episode opens up with, you know, hippies, you know, in Haight Ashbury at that time period, and you know, everybody was in there, and you go into this house and you hear this Seasons of the Suns, you know, type story, that those 60 songs,
With my drop notice, and now you know,
and you see these girls, these like hippie girls, and these guys, and all bodies naked, and this is a true story, by the way, based on Keith. And I have it open. I open it up where you see these naked girls, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and a mailman comes at the door, and then this man's hand comes out from beneath all these women, and it's Keith. He comes out, and it's a beautiful scene. But it's actually what happened. He had a scene with the mailman, and then they go, well, and he's looking down. He goes, now what am I going to do? And he's looking at the ceiling fan. He goes, well, I don't know what are we going to do now? And the ceiling fan is going around, and then we turn that into the helicopter.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a great hook. That's actually very
cinematic.
Yeah.
And my son
takes me from that scene right into Vietnam.
I love that.
Well done.
Very well done.
so we get then how to answer your question a little bit further, Joe. They took pieces and kept them as they were, and then they were also able to intertwine their thoughts, their 70s, what they saw, and put the story, my story, with their story, and made it work. So it was very well, and you know them, so you can see how the talent that they have, and they know how to do it.
100%.
And they've got a very good product now.
Well, I'm already sold. I'm on the edge of my seat. I can't wait to see this. If this was a trailer this past minute and a half of you guys speaking, I'm sold. I'm in.
Look at that. You already got you got your first fan in there. I love that going into the series. And it is true. What hooks? These are the things that work. Really, I love the writing coming together with a great group of filmmakers and storytellers that know how to do it through a cinematic standpoint. I think really I Am Somebody could be something very, very special. I mean, this is the development we're all looking for. Now, Keith and Frank, we're getting to that point now where, the story is starting to get developed. You have great drafts. Things are getting done. I can't wait to hear kind of the next steps in your journeys, where you're seeing it going, how you kind of see this going into the next steps, any kind of expectations or hopes or dreams to kind of see where you want to take the project next.
You want me to go first, or want Keith?
No, please, whoever would like to start.
Oh, well, I believe that it's, me, I stay in reality in our business. Our business, everything is in reality. I don't count anything until it's in the bank.
100%.
And it's very important in our business to stay in reality, because there's that way you don't give any false hope. And one thing I don't want to ever do to anybody, whether it's an actor, a friend, or a colleague, I don't want to give any false hope to anybody, because who am I? Who are we to judge? Who are we to say? So I really fight to stay in reality in our business, because when I've seen stars, and when you get at a certain level, they lose it. They forget where they come from, and all of a sudden, when they get in trouble, they find God. And then they're back to where they started. So it's good to start there. And I think within reality of where we're at is we have it out to a lot of people. Now we hit a lot of obstacles. We hit pandemic, but pandemic. See, we didn't sit there and go, oh well, we're in pandemic. I said, Rick, this is perfect for us. This is time to write.
Right, exactly right.
It gave us that time. It gave us that time. And so we utilized that time. Not only did we I Am Somebody, but we did ESQ.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
We rewrote that as well during that whole period of pandemic. And then we get moving with Warner Brothers. Had a very strong interest. They gave us a great review.
Oh, good.
And then the strike happens, and then all the strikes happen. But, that's the nature of our beast. We're not going to sit here and say, "Oh my God, oh poor us." No, okay, that happened. Let's work on it more. Let's try and get somebody attached, because in the end, with all these obstacles that faced us or is facing us, people need work.
Absolutely right.
So it's the best time to reach these people, whether they're actors, stars, crew, women. They need to work. And right now, our business is open. Where the studios are right now, I'm losing hope in them.
You're correct.
They have no idea where they're going. So they're leaving it up to the end. So independently, we're trying to get this through. We have some really good sources of people. It's very, very strongly interested in FMC and financing, and this will be one of the projects. And it's a matter of closing it within a matter of days. So
of course,
we'll see what happens. And again, not that I don't count anything until it's in the bank. There's a lot of promises, but we just keep moving. I keep moving in our circles. Whoever wants to read it, whoever wants to do it. But but we'll get it done. We'll definitely get it done. And these obstacles, like the strike, and then we had the actor strike, then we had the writer strike, then we had the crew strike. It just gave us more time to work on what we have to work on. So, and we keep moving forward. And in my perspective, I love, me, Joe, when I get behind something, I'm talking about it all the time.
Oh, you back it up 100%, Frank. It's fantastic. And it's got to be great confidence of Keith that you have it that way in same reality. Keith, I'd love to hear your perspective about going through this process for the first time as, now somebody in the world of entertainment like that, developing a show.
Well, I just remembered something, and it isn't my first time. The first screenplay that I wrote was called Circumstantial Evidence.
That's right. There you go. Yeah.
And I wrote it while I was getting my MBA in Phoenix, Arizona at ASU. I had this story, and a lady sat down. I was out having lunch one day, out in the courtyard, and this lady, 5 years older than me or so, sat down with me. We started talking, and she was getting her degree in creative writing. And I said, well, I got a story, because she was saying something about a story. I said, I got a story for you. And bottom line is, I put the story together. She helped write it because she knew how to write a screenplay.
Yeah.
We put the story together. I paid her for it. For her typing, we did it all on a typewriter. She did it all on a typewriter. Bottom line was, I got it, and when I graduated, I did it. I copied 25 of these things, and I had a book called in the library. There was something called the Red Book, and the Red Book was back in the old days that listed every film studio, every agent, every producer, director in Hollywood. I went in and I wrote down 25 of the ones I recognized the best of, and I sent 25
I love it.
of those screenplays out with a cover letter to nobody. Just it didn't happen. If there was a name there, I put it. Otherwise, you know what? I took a shot.
Hey, what the hell? That's good. Why not? You have to. Exactly right. Yeah.
Within a couple of months, I get a call, and this guy, he's with CAA. Now I'm going, CAA.
What does that mean? Who's that?
I mean, even back then, I know who CAA is.
That's it.
And he said, I'm leaving, and I'm going on my own. I've got your screenplay. I got it. I read it. He said, I want to buy a 1-year right to it. He said, how much you want? And I didn't know. And he said, I'll give you $5,000 for it if I can give me 1-year option on this. $5,000 in 1990 was a lot of money to me. And
why not? Yeah.
Again, I was just getting, so I got $5,000 for that first screenplay.
That's great.
In 1990, and it's called Circumstantial Evidence. And it's basically the story of Adrian's revenge that I wrote the book of many years later.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I forgot to tell you that, Frank.
Oh, I forgot. I just realized that. That's funny though.
Oh, that's a great story. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, and it's go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So where you can see that this thing's has been evolving for decades now, in one manner or another. So now with what Rick and Frank Sima have got together, again, I'm more optimistic than I've ever been that this thing just might get there.
I think it will.
And also it's so timely. It's so timely, and the music in it, the music score is incredible, because not only that, and he has that, Supertramp. He had them out in Northern California.
The Eagles. I had the Rolling Stones. We had Led Zeppelin. We had the Beach Boys. We all of the top acts during that period of time, and we've intertwined some of the great music in there with the scenes, and you can't beat that.
No, you kidding me? That's fantastic.
Keep in mind, we never done. Keep in mind, we know them. It's just great.
Keep in mind, we know those bands as they are, stars now.
Yes,
but they were all coming out too in the 70s, where they were just finding their voices as well. And that's what's incredible about the story, and that's how the story. It's like we're just finding. It's no anticipation. It's like it's unexpected. And people just rolled with it. I mean, not only think of CBGBs when you have Patty, Deborah Harry, and Blondie, Powell, and just in the Ramones, Hilly, when he mentioned Hilly, who created this place, and he wanted a bluegrass band club. It turned out to be the biggest punk rock band, culture. So this was like just fell at his feet, but he learned how to. And this is what the story is, that the heart of this man, and in the story, our main character is he learned how to grab the opportunity, grab it when it's in your feet. Let's see where it grows. And then it kept growing. Let's go bigger. He didn't stop. And then until he ran the whole thing, and Madison Square Garden had to run him out of the business.
That's it. You're out of here.
Like, but after being very successful himself,
of course.
And so it's about these things were coming into him, and how from the outside world coming to your world, and how you're experiencing it. And people turn away from it. They turn away from it. They close their eyes from it. They don't know how to do it. They deal with a little bit of it. He just accepted and said, "Hey, I'm here.
So,
I am somebody."
So there's a little bit of dark side to this also.
Okay.
And there's some cocaine abuse in there. There's this stuff happened, and I saw a lot. I witnessed a lot. I may have been involved in parts of it that come into the story. And there's some dark sides to it, which I know were an important part of the book. Important part of the book of not so much of the book I'm writing now, but of the story that I originally sent to Seema, the White Lady. And,
Yes.
and bottom line here, that Rick and Frank and Seema have pulled back on a lot of the darkness and have put a lot more light into it. And it's made the story even that much better.
I'm sure it has, because really, I mean, what they did was so smart, because The Darkness is great undertone, but to really have a series like that, love the character. And again, I would trust people like their judgment, Frank and Rick. Scripts are doing, developing characters that, and taking what you said was the darkness and turning it into a positive, spinning it into a way where audiences are going to love it. That's the way, because that's, again, it's a popular time period for people that weren't born into it. They want to see that world. So to do it in a light where they show it in that kind of way where you're getting a piece of the darkness, but you're not diving too dark to get the ultimate truth behind it, that's a great way to go about it. Really, hats off to Rick and Frank for that, because great way to develop that subject matter.
I agree.
Yeah, and also it's so timely. I mean, I think today's market, people don't want to see what's going on in the world today. You know, there's so much going on out there. We're being hit from every corner, and whatever side you're on, it doesn't make a difference. But to me, it's like people want to escape and they want to go back. They want to see back in there. Believe it or not, back in those days, when you pulled out a gun on stage, it was a big deal. It was like, oh my God, you got a gun.
Yeah.
You know. But nowadays, it's just everywhere you go, everybody has a gun.
There you go. Yeah.
So back then, it's that innocent time, that time when, like when Pablo Escobar was coming in the '70s, bringing it to America.
Yeah.
That's the time he's talking about.
Yeah.
And then those are the people he meets in northern, California, and
And
you get so
before, and all the others.
Everything that goes with it.
They were just there was just a lot of fun. It was a great time to be alive. New York was a different place than it is today. It was frankly grungy then. It was boy, the Lower East Side where CBGB was, Frank, remember?
oh my God.
That was boy, you didn't want to go down there at night.
I know, and I was a student there. And that was CBGB's was our first stop for a drink for the night, Friday nights. We go there, and then we either end up back there later on, like 4 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah.
Now people don't realize the bands weren't all great. I mean, they were all like, bah, bah. You're going like, oh, okay, let's time to go. You know, I remember, and you just walk in, it's like walk into a studio apartment, and you never went to the bathroom. You never went to the bathroom. Everybody went out. The guys were, it's easy for the guys went outside, but it was a lively, man, things were happening. I mean, the movement was happening right before our eyes, and we were part, I mean, you didn't even know it. It didn't become history until 25 years later, as history gets recorded. But it was a beautiful time. And then we moved on. Then we went to Kansas City, or we went somewhere else. But I remember being at CBGB's, and he was telling me the story. I go, and he was there. And when Deborah Harry, when Blondie used to be called something else. It was a long name. And then they came on the stage and they said, okay, from now on, it was a little stage, like a little corner in the room. And they go, okay, from now on, you're not going to know us as whatever that long name was. They goes, from now on, you're going to know us as Blondie.
Yeah.
And this is what everybody did. Oh, okay, cool.
Okay, good for you. Yeah. Exactly.
Now
you're right. Yeah.
Blondie. Now you mentioned Blondie, everybody's like, oh, Blondie. Like, and it really was a time that he was a part of it. But I think he contributed to
100%.
CBGB's as well, because he made them money. He made them, and he made money on it, and it was a cash flow thing happening, and then but then he grew with it, and then he went from when that ended, which all things end
Yeah.
at some point. You move to something else, and he's able to roll with that punch and build off of what he learned and build on to something new. You know, that's what I Am Somebody's about.
And Hilly Crystal was a quite a character. Quite a character. I'll tell you, I could tell you some. I told the story of when we went to sign the contract in his apartment with the big Doberman picture of the dog that he had. Anyway, it was,
So he used to let that dog go to the bathroom in the club while people are there.
That'll happen. There you go.
that dog pooped wherever that dog went.
Whatever wanted, that's it.
And Hilly, everybody that worked in CB, they would go out around and clean up after the
Clean
dog.
it up, the dogs. There you go. Yeah.
And it was a big dog. So we go. Then fast story. His apartment was 3 blocks or 2 blocks away from the CBGB club. My attorney, who knew Hilly, we walked up 3 floors in a grungy old building. With the dog, he had the dog out. He took bites. We walk in, there were papers all over the floor and piles of poop all over the apartment. And we sat down in the kitchen, and the attorney who knew Hilly says, how do you live like this? Hilly says, oh, you get used to it.
Yeah.
Hilly goes, well, and over at the club, my employees pick up after him, and my attorney goes, well, you ought to send some of your employees over here.
Exactly right.
We were happy to get the hell out of there. Hilly was quite a character.
And he talked like that too. When he's on stage, he used to say, all right, there's no disco in this place. And all the band members, they have to move their own damn equipment.
No. I love
There's no roadies here. And he goes, I got this new band. What the hell is their name? And he goes, forget it. Just get up and play. He goes, and the band gets up and he goes, by the way, we're the Ramones.
The Ramones, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
The Ramones. And he goes, and I'm going to, and everybody good. Oh, great, cool, Ramones. You know what I'm saying?
No one knows at the time. Yeah.
But look what they started, man. I mean, the whole scene.
Yeah.
I mean, music. Look where music evolved from that.
It was originally country bluegrass and CBGB's blues and blues.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it didn't, and Joe, it didn't hit. I mean, it just do well. And part of the reason it wasn't doing well is that the bands were coming in and playing cover music, and then he had to pay the ASCAP fees.
Right.
Yeah.
He hated it.
Of course. Yeah.
So the grunge, or he called it street rock. Punk that became punk rock.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, wow.
It was all original. He thought, well, this is good, and they started bringing the bands in that he didn't have to pay the ASCAP fees on. And that's how the whole thing went from. He kept the CBGB, which is no longer country bluegrass blues, but he kept it as but then it was all street rock.
But it just fit in. It just fit in. And Talking Heads lived across the street.
Yeah.
And then how the punk rock got its name, and that is part of the story as well, is that these two young kids from NYU, they were down there and they were starting a magazine. Starting a magazine, but they said, "Oh, well, this is new." But that's exactly how Keith explained it, as they would go and interview these people.
Yeah.
The artists, they weren't nobodies then. They said, "Okay, I'll get interviewed. That way, I'll get out there."
Of course.
They interviewed David Bowie. They interviewed Iggy Pop. They interviewed Patti Smith, everybody. And then they were saying, well, what are we going to call this magazine? And somebody says, I don't know, punk rock. It's like a bunch of punks, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And they go, punk rock.
Punk rock, there it is.
Called it Punk Rock Magazine, and that's how it got its name by these 2 young kids who started, I think it was Punk Rock Magazine turned into Cream. You know?
Okay.
Oh yeah, Cream.
Street rock, and then it went to punk rock, as Frank is explaining. The 2 rules were, for the bands, you had to move in and move out your own equipment, and you couldn't have any cover music at all.
I love it.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
And no disco. No disco. Disco was like disco was coming in.
Well,
disco was coming in the end.
No, that
Yeah.
fly at all.
Yeah. Yeah, disco was coming in around that time, like Studio 54, the attic.
yeah.
And Hilly was like, no disco here. There's no disco, no polyester suits,
No, that's it.
That's, that's where you got the mohawks, you got the rubber jacket.
It's an amazing feeling. It's an amazing time. I actually can't believe we got like 3 red lights going on here. We've been on for an hour already. I can't believe it, guys. No, don't ever be sorry, because what I'm telling you guys, I am somebody. Keith and Frank, you guys, everything about your guys' story to you guys together as a team creating this entity, the unit works. You know what I mean? There's a dynamic feeling between the two of you as the creators, from the original writer to now the screenwriter, to you guys coming together, the collaboration and this time period. I guarantee you people are going to love I Am Somebody. This is something, like Chris said before, if this trailer was there, people could see things, they'd be attracted to it. I think it's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful point. And Keith, as you continue along this process, we need to have you back on the show again. And again, just to talk, like, we need to do like next time we'll tell everybody, let's like schedule like a 2-hour Keith hour. Let's make some stories. Let's make this thing happening, because I really think it's truly awesome having you both on, and I really appreciate both of you and sharing your story with us today.
Well, thank you both, and anytime. I was when Frank told me, I said, of course, love to. And anytime you'd like to have us back, I'd love to do it.